Good morning and happy Sunday. Can I just take a moment to thank you for being here? Seriously, there are so many new faces here, and honestly, I don't know how you found me. Maybe I should cheers the YouTube gods for connecting us together. But no matter how you ended up here, just please note that I am so appreciative for your likes and for your comments. Your comments, they're my favorite. And most importantly, your shares. I really am just so thrilled that you were here and happy that you're along on this journey with me. Comments like, you showed up on my feed and I subscribed immediately, or I just discovered you and I look forward to binge watching all of your past videos. Those comments just truly have made my day and warms my heart, and it just kind of gives me that confirmation that what I'm doing is being noticed and you're finding value in it. And to me, that's everything. Question. Do any of you have an awkward space in your house that you just don't know what to do with? Well, today I'm going to walk you through a very awkward space that was in our kitchen and how we built a custom unit from scratch with our own two hands. And I can't wait to show you. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is the space that I'm talking about. And for the longest time, I would look at this space and I would wonder, what was the intention when the builders built this home for this space? To me, it just didn't make sense. Like, what do they think could happen in this space? And before I moved in, this is where Mark would store his garbage cans and his water buckets for the fish tank that he had at the time. And of course, you guys know me by now, that wasn't gonna do. So I was trying to figure out what we could do with this space to make it more useful and more intentional. So we tried finding shelving and cabinets that we could just purchase at a store or online that could fit into this space, but because it is so narrow, it made it literally impossible for us to buy anything off of the shelf. And so as all of our projects start, I pulled out a piece of paper and started to come up with an idea of how we could use this space and make it seem more intentional to our kitchen area. I wanted shelving to go on top that spanned from wall to wall, and I did not want any of the hardware or brackets to be showing. And additionally, down below, I wanted to build a cabinet that had glass doors and glass shelves. The cabinet would be used to display all of my vintage glassware, and then the shelves up above would be to display all of my cookbooks that I've been collecting over the years, as well as many different vintage and thrifted kitchen items that I had. When I showed the plan to Mark, in Mark's fashion, he loved the idea. He just was not confident that we were going to be able to pull it off. And of course, what do you think I said? It'll be easy. All we have to do is figure out how to hang the shelves. All we have to do is build a box for the cabinet. We can take the doors and the shelving requests to a glass shop, and done. It shouldn't take us long at all. Why does he listen to me? So looking at my measurements, he then determined how much wood we would need, and guess what? Off to Home Depot we went. Once we got home, we got started right away on the build out for the cabinet. I knew that I wanted the cabinet to be raised off the floor at the same height as our existing kitchen cabinets were. So it just so happened that the exact height was the same as a can of black beans that I had on the counter, and so I used that as a guide to make all of the cuts for our bottom of our base. Once those were cut, we screwed a board to each side of the smaller boards, and then we placed a board on top, nailed that into the base, and although I didn't record it, we did attach the base to the studs in the wall. And then before we moved on any further in this process, we went ahead and painted over that green paint with a creamy neutral color. Once the base was set, it was time to find the studs on the inside walls of the alcove. Once those were found, we took our sideboard and attempted to nail it into the stud, but we missed. We tried several times and kept missing, so I very professionally took a wooden chopstick, marked with the pencil where the stud was located, and then used that as a guide all the way down the board, and it worked like a charm. I never say that my methods are perfect, but I do what works for me, and that worked. I did this little trick on both sides of the wall, and next it was time to add the middle board, which we screwed into a stud using pocket holes. Unfortunately, I don't have video of this here, but I will show you how to use a pocket hole jig once we build the cabinet doors later on. Anyway, once the middle board was in place, we attached the top board by using nails. And now, the base and the frame for the cabinet was done. As we're chugging along here, I do want to mention that the build for this was quite difficult, mainly because there were no two walls that were the same. There were no two cuts that were the same. Just because one wall was 8 inches did not automatically mean that the other wall was 8 inches. And in fact, it wasn't. So let's just say this wall was 8 inches, this wall was 7 1/4 inch. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, what is the middle board going to be? Is it going to be the 8 inches or is it going to be the 7 1/4 inch? And if we pick the 7 1/4 inch, how do we make it square at the end? And honestly, I have no idea how it happened, but I promise you that if you came over here and you did a measurement, like literally no two measurements are the same, nothing is symmetrical, and this is exactly why we couldn't buy anything off the shelf. The space was just too wonky for us to try to figure that out. So next up were the floating shelves, and as you can see here in this picture, the blue painter's tape is where I wanted the shelves to be. And so I did not want the two shelves up top to have any brackets or any sort of hardware showing. I really wanted them to be floating. And then the third shelf would be sitting right on top of the cabinet, and I wanted that to be the same thickness in wood as the rest of the shelves, just to make it look like they went together. And you can also see here in the picture that I wanted the top shelf of the cabinet to stick out a little bit from the cabinet. I didn't want it to be flush to the cabinet. I wanted it to stick out just like a regular surface on top of your cabinet would be. I really wanted that to stick out, and that's why we set the cabinet box back a little bit. So because I didn't want any of the brackets or hardware to be shown with the floating shelves, we went to YouTube University and just started scrolling of different options of how to create floating shelves. And so we watched several videos, but the video that made most sense to us and just seemed easiest was one saying to use these brackets from Amazon. And so essentially what you would do is that you would place each of the brackets into the stud in the wall. And then from there, you would mark on the back part of your wood where the holes should be for your different brackets. And then taking a really fat drill bit, you would drill down into the back of the board. And then once that is done, you would just take the board and then you just slide it over top of the brackets, and you should have floating shelves. So that was the goal, but before we could do that, we had to figure out how to make a really big cut. So we took this tool, and we found this handy tool on YouTube University, of course, and basically it allows you to measure the angle of your wall, and then down here it will tell you what cut that you need to make on your miter saw. And so once we did that, we then kind of started to sweat a little bit, because we realized that the old miter saw that we had and had been using for other projects was not going to be able to tilt enough to make that very specific cut. And so the only way to make that cut was by buying a new saw. So we went back and forth and we started searching saws, and of course there were some less expensive ones, and then of course there were some that were just astronomical, and we decided to kind of split the difference and go towards the higher end but not the super high end. And we went and bought a new saw. And don't think for a second that Mark wasn't thrilled. I mean, like, anytime that he can drive over to Home Depot and buy a new toy, he is one happy man. And this day he was elated. In fact, I just allowed him to go by himself because I wanted him to go and have his bro talk and go talk to the people about which saw is the best and this is what I'm doing. You know, he loves that stuff. So I allowed him to go by himself, and he came back and he had like the biggest smile on his face, and it was kind of cute. Once we got it home, we realized how in the heck were we able to do any of these other projects that we did before this build without this saw. It really was worth every single cent. With just a few measurements and a couple of test cuts, you will notice that we did cut the first piece just a little long to make sure that we just had the angle right, and then once we figured out we had the angle right, we did cut it to size, but it just went through like butter. It was honestly the best purchase that we've made so far. Now back to the brackets. Next, we took a piece of wood that we had just cut and made a pencil outline of where we wanted the shelf to go, and then we found where the studs were located by using our stud finder and then drilling holes into the wall. We weren't really worried about making several holes because we knew that the shelf would cover it up. So once the studs were found, we then attached the brackets to the wall, and then next comes the fun part. We then measured exactly where we needed to drill the holes so that we could slide the shelf directly onto the bracket. We also added a piece of blue tape onto the drill bit to let us know when we've drilled down far enough. And now it was time to see if our holes were indeed in the right place, so we went inside to test it. And again, by the grace of God, we were dead on. But we did notice that the shelf didn't fit flush against the wall, and I really wanted the shelf to be flush. So we took the wood back out and decided to chisel out a portion of the wood on the back so that it would fit over the wide part of the bracket, resulting in the shelf being flush to the wall. We slid the bracket into the hole of the shelf and it fit perfectly, so we decided to take it back inside to see if it would in fact be flush. And it was. We did this entire process again for the second shelf, and I can't remember how many days this took us, but let's just say this shot put some confidence back into our pockets because we both were feeling pretty good about ourselves. So now that the shelves were in place, it was now time to focus on building the cabinet doors. Have I ever built cabinet doors before? No. But as I always say, how hard could it be? All you have to do is attach 4 pieces of wood together, add some hinges, get some glass put in, done. Cabinet doors, right? Yeah. So to build the cabinets, we first needed to measure the space on each side of the box. Knowing that they were going to be symmetrical, we had to build each door separately because no 2 cuts were going to be the same. In order to make the cabinets extra sturdy, because they would be holding glass, we decided to attach them using pocket holes. Pocket holes really allow the screws to be placed at an angle, resulting in a pretty solid joint. Using this pocket hole jig, it takes all of the guesswork out and you get the right angle at the right depth every time. And to really make that joint secure, be sure to use wood glue on the seams before drilling screws into the pocket holes. This isn't a must, but I knew I wanted a smooth finish, so I placed a dollop of wood glue into the holes and then added in these plugs. Once they were dry, you simply sand them down until smooth, and then they're ready to stain. I think this took us about a week to create the doors. There were lots of trials and errors. Again, no 2 cuts were the same, but this happy face makes it all worth it. Next up, we needed to figure out how to route a space in the back of the cabinet so that when we took the cabinet to the glass shop, we had a place to set the glass into. And so off to YouTube University that we went. We watched countless videos on how to do this, and we finally figured out, okay, let's go try it out. And we tried it out and failed miserably many times. We would cut through the wood. We would cut and we would think we were going straight, and then all of a sudden it jars off to the right or it jars off to the left. It was horrendous. I mean, we probably spent a good week or so just testing and trying to figure out how to route this space in the back of our doors. And I didn't want to actually test it on our doors until we were able to test it on like just scrap pieces, and consecutively at least 3 times got it right. So test after test after test, and I think this was like 13 or 14 times. Finally, I was able to route the space on our test piece consecutively for 3 times, and so it was time to try it on our actual doors. And with a whole bunch of luck and by the grace of God, we were able to figure it out. And so now it was time to take the doors to get glass put in, but first we had to figure out how to put the hinges on. Because we were going to have glass in the doors, I wanted the doors to have a soft close. So that meant that we needed to buy soft close hinges, which we did. And we also, thanks to YouTube, purchased a hinge jig. And so this jig essentially allows you to place it wherever you want the hinges to go. And then you drill in a hole just deep enough without going through the entire piece of wood. And then there's 2 little pieces that you drill into that your screws would go into. So it's a very simple process. If you have hinges that you're going to be placing into anything, I promise you, you must buy the hinge jig, and I will link that down below for you. So once we figured out how to get the hinges installed, before taking the doors over to get glass put in, it was time to stain. So I headed off to Home Depot to find the stain that I wanted. I really wanted something that was as dark as walnut, but I also wanted a little red tint in there to match an existing piece of furniture we had in the kitchen. I bought a few different colors, and because no one color was exactly what I wanted, I decided to mix a couple of colors together, and it worked out perfectly. We then added a few coats of flat polyurethane, allowed that to dry, and then removed the tape. Now, finally, it was time to head to the glass shop to get glass installed in the cabinet doors, as well as have glass shelves made for the interior of the cabinet. Shout out to the Durham Glass Company because they were amazing. Their prices were awesome, and everything was done in about 3 days. So notice the size difference here. Again, no 2 cuts were the same. So once we got them home, we went ahead and added the hinges and installed them into the cabinet. I found these knobs on Etsy, stained them the same color, and I love that this cabinet looks very similar to the armoire I'll be showing you soon. We then installed these pegs that we got from Amazon, and then just simply placed the glass shelves on top. And finally, our build was complete. And now for the fun part, time to decorate. There are some really amazing pieces on these shelves that I absolutely adore. I actually found this pot at a thrift store, and when I showed people on Instagram, like, no, everyone was like, why would you buy that? I mean, it looks like crap, but to me it just looked like this pot has a story. Like, look at all of the drips. It looks like there was queso made in here and all sorts of dips, and there was parties, and this pot had a life, and I just felt like it was meant for me to have it and to create a news story for it and to have it at my own parties. And so I have it up here on the shelf and I absolutely love it. And I found these candlesticks at the same thrift store. I think they were $4 for the pair, and I just had to get them. I really wasn't intending to use them as candlesticks, but I just wanted them because I liked the way that they looked. I love the patina on them, and I just thought that they would be a nice decorative thing to put on these shelves. Last year for Christmas, my sister gifted all of us sisters this plate that is really special to us because it is my mom's famous recipe for hot water cornbread, and it's the script is actually her handwriting, and so to have this is really special. I will have it forever. It will always be on display no matter where I live, and I just really love that it's here in this space. As you guys know, I am a huge collector of vintage glassware, and I just love that this cabinet allows me to display my full collection. It brings me so much joy. I love just being able to take things out and make a cocktail with it, and even the joy of placing them back into the cabinet just is everything to me. It may sound silly, but for me, this is what joy looks like. Another space that I want to show you before we go is our little breakfast nook, which I absolutely love. Before I moved in, there was just a glass table here, and there was a fish tank that he had as well. But then once I moved in, I just thought this would be a really great area for us just to hang out. If he's cooking, I'll sit here and chat with him. If I'm cooking, he does the same. We often have breakfast here. I work here sometimes, even have coffee here. Obviously, I also record my videos here. And so I just really love this space and thought I would walk you through a little bit. This armoire is the best thrift find I've ever found. It is my favorite. I will have it forever. It was only $40, and the moment I saw it, I fell in love with it and knew I had to have it. In my old apartment, I used it to just as extra storage in my bedroom for blankets and some of my craft stuff and extra sheets and extra pillows. And in this space, I'm using it to store lots of things like our kitchen appliances, some of our holiday and special dishware. I also have lots of board games stored in there. So it's just a really special piece. And again, I will have it forever. The drapes, and Donna, this is for you, new follower who asked about the drapes last week, and I promised that this week I would be showing them, so here they are. They are actually from Amazon. Believe it or not, they are. They are really beautiful drapes. They're thick. They have a room darkening mechanism made into them. They are faux linen, but they feel like it. I mean, they are a very luxurious drape for very little cost. And so I will link them down below for you. And if you have any questions about what specific size or color or anything, definitely let me know. And the curtain rod and finials are from Pottery Barn. And again, I'll link those down below. The chairs I actually found on Craigslist. They were $75 for the pair, and I just love the structure of them, and so I fell in love with them immediately, but knew that I was going to go ahead and get them reupholstered. And so I got them reupholstered in this beautiful fabric, and they used to reside in my living room at my apartment, but then once I moved here, I thought that I just loved the idea of having these upholstered chairs at our table. So yes, I really do enjoy this space, and I love this space connected with the built-ins that we did. It just gives you a very welcoming and warm and collected and thoughtful vibe. And you know me, I love that. And there we have it. The amount of joy that I have every time that I pass by this space is beyond words. I am just so proud of us, especially for learning how to make that cut right there, in addition to learning how to create doors and the full cabinet, how to hang the hinges and figure out the routing tool. I mean, just so many new things that we learned, and I am beyond proud of this build here. As Marie Forleo says, everything is figure-outable. And I am just so happy that we stuck to our vision and we figured it out. None of this we knew how to do. Not one thing have we ever did before, but with a chopstick and a can of black beans and YouTube University, we figured it out, and I am so happy. So, what questions do you have for me? Is there anything within the video today that I didn't explain in detail enough? If so, comment down below. That's where the magic is, down below in those comments. Comment down below and ask me any questions that you have. Even if I forgot to mention what something was, or if I forgot to add a link down below, send me a comment and I promise I will respond back. And with that, I'm gonna let you go. I hope you enjoyed this build. I know that I did. I am super proud, and I hope that you guys feel the same way. And if you have any questions, just go ahead, hit me up in the comments. And then other than that, I will see you next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. The sharing is helping. You guys are helping me soar with those shares, so I am so appreciative and thank you. So bye guys, I'll see you next week.